The enormity of your crime is profoundly shocking.
Alright, Gemma, at this moment, I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder.
Sweet, educated.
Can't stank a stunk of a dead person.
No comment.
Kind and adorable.
What you did too.
Deborah was my friend, until she betrayed me. I went to her house that June morning. I just wanted to convince her, I swear, but things got out of control. 5 hours later, I left there dragging a suitcase. Inside, there were no clothes or memories. It was Deborah's body. I had just killed her. I walked through the streets of London and thought I had solved all my problems. I didn't realize it then, but that suitcase didn't just carry a corpse, it also held my life sentence. My name is Jemma Mitchell, and this is the story of how I became a murderer.
On June 11th, 2021, Jemma Mitchell arrived at the home of Mee Kuen Chong in Wembley, northwest London. CCTV footage would later show Mitchell entering the property at 8 a.m. with a large blue suitcase. What happened inside those walls over the next 5 hours would shock the nation and break the hearts of Chong's family and friends.
I first met Deborah. That's what Mee Kuen liked to be called. It sounds more American, I think. At our church in August 2020. We bonded quickly over our shared faith. She was kind, albeit a bit eccentric. Deborah had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and was on antipsychotic medication. She believed I was curing her illness through spiritual healing. She even thought she was in a relationship with Prince Charles and could communicate with him through YouTube. But who was I to judge? We all have our quirks. I think she started to care for me because I played my part well and could make her smile. Don't say I was a total monster. I was making this old decrepit woman happy. Our friendship deepened over the months, and when I mentioned the trouble I was having with renovating my family home, Deborah was quick to offer help. She agreed to give me £200,000. It was a godsend, or so I thought. You see, my mother and I had been cheated out of £230,000 by two builders we'd hired for the renovation. Our £4 million property in Willesden was falling apart, and we desperately needed the money to add another floor. Deborah's offer seemed like the perfect solution. But then, out of nowhere, she changed her mind. Just like that. As if it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing to me. That house. It was everything.
Chong pulling her financial support seems to have triggered what happened that fateful June morning. Mitchell hadn't worked in the UK since 2015 because she wasn't registered with the General Osteopathic Council. She had been living and working as an osteopath in Australia for several years, but her Australian qualifications weren't recognized in the UK when she returned. As a result, she had little money to her name. That's why she had been counting on Chong's cash to save her family's crumbling property.
I remember the day Deborah told me she was withdrawing her offer. She said I should sell the house instead. Enjoy the money. Enjoy it. That house had been in my family for generations. The very thought of selling it made me sick. I tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't budge. As the days passed, I grew more desperate. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. All I could think about was the money. The money that would solve all our problems. The money that Deborah was refusing to give me. She was now the one responsible for my house falling apart. So she needed to pay for what she was doing to me. And I was going to make her pay. On the morning of June 11th, I packed a large blue suitcase with what I thought I might need. I told myself I was just going to talk to Deborah one last time to convince her to change her mind. But deep down, I think I knew what I was really planning to do. I arrived at her house just after 8 a.m. Deborah welcomed me in. Poor woman, she was always sweet and childlike, unaware of what was about to happen. We sat in her living room, and I tried one last time to persuade her. but she was firm. The money was no longer an option. I don't remember exactly how it happened. One minute we were talking, the next. Well, let's just say Deborah wasn't talking anymore. There was this moment of silence after. Just me, standing there looking down at her. I remember thinking, well, what now, Jemma? What had I done? But it was too late for regrets. I had to act fast.
The exact details of Chong's murder are still unclear, as Mitchell has never given a full account of what happened. However, a post-mortem showed that Chong had a fractured skull and multiple broken ribs. It was brutal. You could see how desperate and enraged Mitchell was.
Now that Deborah was dead, I started searching the whole house for her personal and financial documents. I found her will and took that too. Then came the tricky part, getting her into the suitcase. I had to break some of her ribs to make her fit. Trust me, I had no choice. By the time I left, it was past 1 p.m. I'd been there for over 5 hours. Can you imagine? 5 hours in a house with a dead body. But I couldn't think about that. Had to keep moving. The suitcase was heavy, but I managed to drag it out of the house. As I stepped out into the sunshine, I remember thinking, act normal, Jemma. Just act normal. But how do you act normal when you're lugging around a dead body? I started walking, trying not to draw attention. Little did I know, CCTV was catching every step. Amateur mistake, really. I walked through London for over 2 hours before finally catching a taxi home. My finger was throbbing. I'd broken it during the struggle with Deborah. I'd have to get that looked at later.
CCTV footage would later corroborate Mitchell's movements on that day. The images of her struggling with the now bulging suitcase would become key evidence in the prosecution's case. And yes, that evening, Mitchell even visited St. Thomas's Hospital in central London to have her broken finger treated, claiming she had shut it in a door.
To be honest, I didn't know what I was going to do next. For the next 2 weeks, I kept the suitcase in our garden. The smell was getting worse by the day, but I couldn't bring myself to dispose of it yet. I spent that time trying to figure out what to do. I created a new will on my computer, naming myself and my mother as the beneficiaries of Deborah's £700,000 estate. Just a few clicks and keystrokes, and I could solve all our financial problems. As the days went by, the smell became unbearable. So I decided to get rid of the suitcase on June 26th. I reactivated a deceased neighbor's mobile phone to hire a car, then loaded the suitcase into it. The drive to Salcombe in Devon was long. And to make it worse, about 200 miles from London, one of the car's tires blew out. I had to stop at a co-op garage and call for assistance. I was so nervous, afraid that the repairman would find out what was going on. The truth is, you could smell the suitcase from miles away. When I got to Salcombe, I found a nice wooded area, dragged the suitcase out there. But then I realized I needed to make identification harder. So, I cut off her head. Yeah, I know, evil. Left the body there, moved the head about 10 meters away. Bit of misdirection, you see. I drove back to London, convinced I had gotten away with it. But the walls were already closing in. On July 6th, just over a week after I had disposed of Deborah's body, the police came knocking at my door. They arrested me on suspicion of murder.
In fact, the police discovered Chong's remains on June 27, 2021 in Salcombe, Devon. The body was found headless, dumped on a woodland path near Bennett Road. It would take another 4 days for police to locate the head, about 10 meters away from the body. The state of decomposition made it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, but the fractures to Chong's skull and ribs told a story of dark violence.
I kept repeating, no comment, to every question during the interrogation. I thought if I just stayed quiet, they wouldn't have enough evidence to charge me. I was wrong.
The evidence against Mitchell was overwhelming. CCTV footage, forensic evidence, and the forged will all pointed to her guilt. On July 10, 2021, she appeared at Willesden Magistrates Court and was remanded in custody.
The trial began on October 11, 2022. They talked about my background, my degree in human sciences from King's College London, my award for anatomical excellence, my years practicing as an osteopath in Australia. They even mentioned the content on my professional website, where I'd boasted about my experience in dissection of human cadavers. I wondered if they thought that made me some kind of monster, capable of cold-blooded murder, but they didn't understand. This wasn't about some morbid fascination with death. It was about survival, about protecting my family's legacy. But throughout the trial, I always maintained my innocence. I didn't take the stand. My lawyer advised against it. Instead, I sat there day after day, listening as they pieced together my movements, my actions, my supposed motives. They made it sound so calculated, so cold. But they didn't understand. That house wasn't just a building. It was my heritage, my responsibility. And Deborah, she was going to take that all away with her change of heart. She made me do this. On October 21st, 2022, the jury was sent out to deliberate. For 6 days I waited, hoping against hope for a miracle. But deep down, I think I knew what was coming. On October 27th, the verdict came back. Guilty. As I stood in the dock, hearing those words, I felt nothing. It was as if I was watching it all happen to someone else. But the real shock came when they announced that my sentencing would be televised. I would be the first woman in the UK to have her sentencing broadcast live. As I stood before Judge Richard Marks KC on October 28th, I listened as he described my actions as extremely devious. He spoke about the chilling aspect of what I had done to Deborah's body after killing her. He said I had shown absolutely no remorse. But what could I say? How could I explain the desperation, the fear of losing everything? They sentenced me to life in prison with a minimum term of 34 years. And just then, I realized that my life as I knew it was over. I wouldn't be eligible for parole until October 21st, 2056. I would be 72 years old.
The sentencing of Jemma Mitchell brought some closure to a case that had shocked the nation. But for the family and friends of Mee Kuen Chong, that doesn't ease the pain and loss. During the sentencing, a victim impact statement from Chong's sister in Malaysia was read to the court. We still don't understand how she died. Did she suffer? This mystery will haunt me forever. Our hearts and thoughts go out to Mee Kuen Chong's family and friends as they try to cope with their loss and find healing after this tragedy.